There's a reason we make those videos. Let you know. Well, the story goes that John Smith was the only Baptist to move into a Roman Catholic community. And he moved in just before Lent, and as Lent got underway, he pursued one of his favorite passions, which is backyard grilling. We have any grillers here? Okay, I'm coming to your house. Very good. And he particularly loved cooking thick, juicy steaks. And so on the first Friday of Lent, he was in his backyard grilling, doing his thing, and the scent of beautiful cooking beef went up into the air, and all of the Roman Catholics in the neighborhood, because you know what they're eating on a Friday during Lent? Do you know? Fish. Fish. And this went on Friday after Friday. There's a lot of Fridays in Lent. Finally, just before the last Friday in Lent, the men of the neighborhood got together and they said, we need to do something about this guy. We can't take it anymore. They sent a delegate to go and meet with him and say, would you be interested in converting to Roman Catholicism? And much to their surprise, he did. And so they took him down to the church, and the priest sprinkled him with some water. He said, you were born a Baptist, you were raised a Baptist, and now you are Roman Catholic. And he thought, okay, this is great. A year goes by. It's the first Friday of Lent. And much to their dismay, these Roman Catholic gentlemen smell the scent of beef wafting into the air once again. And they all realize that maybe he's forgotten. We should go remind him, or maybe he's turned his back on his faith. Who knows? Let's go see John. And as they approach his backyard and walk through the gate, look behind the house, there he is at his grill. He's got a little bit of water, and he's sprinkling it on the beef, and he's saying, you were born a cow, you were raised a cow, say it with me, but now you are a fish. I didn't grow up in the Presbyterian church. If I did, I probably wouldn't have this sense of humor. Actually, I didn't grow up in any church, really. And when I did come to the faith, it was actually in an evangelical Baptist church in my teens. And they didn't really participate in the celebrations of the church calendar like we do. Sure, we had things like Christmas and Easter, but, oh, there's my steak slide. We had stuff like Christmas and we had Easter, but we didn't have much else. Even those major holidays kind of snuck up on us. Like Advent wasn't something they did. Lent wasn't something they did. So it was sort of like, oh, all of a sudden it's Christmas. All of a sudden it's Easter. They didn't do Pentecost. They didn't do Epiphany. They didn't do Women's Missionary Society Sunday, if you can believe it. In fact, they spent a lot more time on secular events like Mother's Day and Father's Day and Thanksgiving than they did on the church calendar. And I'm not being critical because without them I wouldn't be standing here, but that's the way it was. When I came to the Presbyterian church that holds a lot more to a church calendar, and some of you might relate to this, I had never before heard of Lent. I mean, like I'd heard it in passing, but I really had no idea, no knowledge of what it was really about. The hilarious thing is, my first Lent in a Presbyterian church, I was the pastor. I was a student pastor in a Presbyterian church in Beaton, and the choir director came to me and said, we should probably talk about Easter. And I said, Easter's 46 days away. Who cares about Easter right now? She said, yeah, but Lent starts on Sunday. And I said, that's a very good point. And I went and Googled, what is Lent? Here's what I discovered. Some of you know Lent really well, but for those of you who don't, maybe you're new to it like I was back then. Lent is the 6-week period that's 40 days plus Sundays. So 40 days, regular days of the week, and Sundays leading up to Easter. It's one of the most important times of the year for most mainline Christian denominations around the world, particularly Anglican and Reformed, Roman Catholic, and Orthodox traditions. Now, Advent is kind of the fun one, isn't it? It's that time of anticipation, and everybody knows there's a tree full of gifts waiting. So Lent doesn't quite get the same play. It's seen often as a week of, or a month of preparation, solemn reflection, remembrance of the death and the resurrection of Jesus. But to me, Lent is every bit as important as Advent. From its start on Ash Wednesday until its conclusion on Easter Sunday, Lent has been a traditional time of fasting and prayer. You know, just as we carefully prepare for big events in our lives, whether it's a graduation or a wedding or maybe a significant birthday, Lent invites us to make our minds and our hearts ready for the event of remembering Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. So when does Lent start? You may have noticed it shifts in the calendar, which is kind of strange. And it shifts because it follows the liturgical calendar. So the exact date that Lent falls each year changes. It begins on Ash Wednesday, which is always 46 days. It's 40 fasting days and 6 celebration Sundays before Easter Sunday, which is celebrated on the first day after the Paschal full moon. When is the Paschal full moon? I have no idea. You could Google out how they figure that out. Somebody smarter than me. Now, Ash Wednesday is the day after Shrove Tuesday, and I think we know Shrove Tuesday pretty well. Around here, we probably call it Pancake Day, at least we do in my house. Elsewhere, it's known as Mardi Gras, which means, does anyone know? Fat Tuesday. It's where you're to eat up all the fatty foods in the house and the sugary foods before Ash Wednesday. Now, these days, Christians around the world observe Lent in all kinds of different ways. From Orthodox to traditional denominations, they're going to observe this in their own way. Often beginning on Ash Wednesday with a cross of ashes on the forehead and the abstinence of meat until Easter Sunday. Others might choose to just give up one item during Lent. Maybe something like a luxury, like chocolate or meat or alcohol, or in my case, it would be ice cream. It's also becoming increasingly common for people to give up other things in order to focus their faith during such a time. They might give up watching TV, or going to the gym, or maybe even social media. Many Christians also use Lent as a time to do some Bible study, whether in the church or on their own. And they use that time to pray, especially back in the day when you couldn't pull up to McDonald's and get a Big Mac combo, back when making a meal took a lot of work, considering you had to go out to the farm and get it. This fasting freed up a lot of time for such things, though today maybe a little less. Some people make use of devotional books and courses that are available. Others get a little creative. I like this 40 Days Challenge group. What they do is they challenge you to do 40 acts of kindness over the 40 days. And I think that's really cool. Whether it's generosity, putting others first, whatever it is, it's the way they prepare their hearts for Easter. Now here at First Presbyterian, we have a food donation right now going for Love Your Neighbor. So if you go into the Welcome Center, you'll see a box there, and there's things that they're specifically looking for if you'd like to pursue Lent in that way. Now, Sundays in Lent are a little different than the rest of the week. They're very important. And because Christ was risen on the Sunday, we take those Sundays off from fasting and we celebrate. Often, some people will feast. So if we have a feast downstairs after church, that'll be okay today, because today is a feast day. So my question to you is, are you giving anything up for Lent? This year, I'm giving pessimism up for Lent. We'll see how long it lasts. That was for those paying attention. Yeah, that's right. Actually, this year, I don't want to give up anything at all, at least not in terms of meat or pie or social media or anything like that. And I made this decision a few years ago during COVID. Do you remember that? I think I've repressed most of COVID. What a dark time that was. I've really put a lot of those memories away somewhere I don't want to remember. But I think it was right in the middle of COVID that I was thinking about fasting at Lent. I was thinking about self-denial, and I thought, I can't give up one more thing. Like, seriously, what more could we give up at that time? We'd given up movies and parties and weddings and dinners with friends. We'd given up jobs and safety and certainty for the future. I swear, all we had left was basically meat and ice cream. And if I gave those up, what would I have left? So I thought, and I've taken a stance since then, what if I focus not on what I can give up, but rather what I can take up? And if we do have to give something up, maybe it should be something that doesn't bring us joy anyway. The very first thing that jumped to the top of my mind is pessimism. If I had to give something up, it would certainly be all the negativity that surrounds us. So this year, instead of a swear jar, I started a negativity jar right here. Every time that I think pessimistic thoughts, I throw money in. It's only half empty. I didn't say I was giving up soft pastor jokes. But seriously, I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the world is a really negative place right now. I mean, there's a lot going on. Okay, hold on to your hats. We'll touch on a few of them. What about global poverty? There's 670 million people, or 8.4% of the world, that is experiencing right now extreme poverty. When we talk about refugees, for the very first time in history, the number of refugees has surpassed 100 million. It surpassed it in 2022 with the Russia-Ukraine war. Those numbers have pushed all the way up to 122.6 million people displaced from their homes. Now, speaking of war, there are currently 56 conflicts in the world, which is the most since World War II. Now, if you want reason to be scared, that's a good one right there. These conflicts involve 92 countries, and many of them have conflicts outside of their own borders, and some of them are internal. A lot of these conflicts aren't major conflicts, they're minor conflicts, but minor conflicts increase the likelihood of major conflicts in the future. For example, in 2019, which wasn't too long ago, Ethiopia, Ukraine, and Gaza were identified as minor conflicts. Things change pretty quickly. And then, of course, there's this. The United States is currently garnering the attention of the world as tensions rise between the U.S., Canada, China, and basically all of its partners around the world. I mean, who would have ever predicted that Doug Ford would be pulling American liquor off the LCBO shelves And Wayne, from Wayne's World, would be encouraging us all to get our elbows up. So yeah, there's a lot to worry about. But there's a difference between legitimate concerns and a spirit of negativity. You see, we should stand up against violence and injustice and oppression. I'm not saying that we turn a blind eye to real serious threats to humanity. I mean, that's what Jesus kind of called us to do, isn't it? To stand up for the little guy, to stand up for justice and truth. But you know what I mean, don't you? When you come across a news article that's just negative for negativity's sake, just to sell issues, or you get stuck in a social media comment section where every single person who is having a bad day seems to show up and take it out on everybody else, it's really easy to get sucked into pessimism. A pessimism defined is a tendency to see the worst aspect of things or believe that the worst will happen. It's a lack of hope or confidence in the future. And as Christians, we believe that God is always at work against the forces of evil. And that means we always have hope. I want you to think about Good Friday. Good Friday, the cross is the symbol of our faith. And for us, it's a symbol of victory. It's a symbol of hope. But on that very day, for those disciples, it was anything but. You see, to them, they thought the Romans had won. They thought the Jewish ruling elite had won. They thought their leader had been killed. And up to that point, people killed stayed dead. But then, 3 days later, what happened? 3 days later, that darkest moment in history became the most joyful, triumphant, victorious day in history. That's the God that we serve. He's the God that takes the darkest of times and brings a light, as we sung about to begin the service today. It's really easy to get sucked into negativity. But if we are honest, the real threat is really not out there. As we've talked about recently, a lot of the time the real threat is right here. Right here. Those negative scripts that we write every day, that the media reinforces as much as it possibly can. These scripts, they just don't do you any good. You start to think over and over again, everything is awful. And maybe you might think everybody around me is awful. Some of you may not admit it to other people, but you might say to yourself, I am unlovable. And some of you might even say, I'm worthless. Part of being a disciple of Christ, it involves training your mind. And here's the thing. Our minds are a lot like electricity. They want to take the shortest path to dirt. They do. It is so easy to get stuck in a loop of negativity. Those who have studied the brain will tell you that the more we repeat a thought to ourselves, the more we widen the pathway that makes having that thought again easier and easier until those thoughts become part of who we are without even knowing it. And so we take these negative thoughts and we repeat them to ourselves time and again. Maybe someone who's been hurt in the past, when something happens to them, they say, see, that's why you can't trust anyone. And something else happens. You see? That's why you can't trust anyone. And day after day you repeat, that's why you can't trust anyone. And before you know it, you can't trust anyone. But the good news is that if we can create pathways of negativity and pessimism, we can also create pathways of positivity. I want to reread a portion of what was so well read earlier from Romans 12. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Now, we talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago, about how part of our faith journey is allowing God to shape how we think. That we are to invite God to renew our minds so that our thoughts are his thoughts. That we see the world through the same lens that he does. But if any of you have ever struggled with pessimism, you know that healthy balance and perspective aren't necessarily achieved just by wishing them to be so. You have to work at it. And Paul gives us the job assignment. He says in Philippians 4, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. I think we all know what dwelling on the negative side of stuff can do. But what about the other side of the coin? If constant preoccupation with negative thinking can drag you down, then dwelling on good stuff can what? It can lift you up. So, I guess the question is, what are the good things in life that we can dwell upon? What are those good things in life? What are those noble things? Those pure things? Those admirable things? What is excellent and praiseworthy? And I wonder, how much time do I really spend thinking about those things when my mind just loves to think about the other side? And I wonder what that does to me and my outlook on life. Especially if I want my thoughts to be God's thoughts, I wonder how negative God is. Probably not very. I wrote down a few things that I've been thinking about lately that are positive. The first thing that came to my mind was that picture of our teens leading worship a couple weeks ago at the Wasaga Beach congregation. In a day and age where out of the 30 churches in our presbytery, I think there's three youth groups that I know of. 3 out of 30. In a day and age where Christianity is declining, faith is rising, but Christendom is declining. To see those kids out there doing that is amazing. That is excellent. That is praiseworthy. I was thinking next about the servers at the Tuesday night dinner that we do once a month. And I don't do any work at those. I really don't. I take no credit. They have me do the prayer, which is an honor, because it looks like I've done something, but I've done nothing. But I do eat. I'm really good at that. And I eat. Why are you laughing? You're laughing at me. But I sit and I want to get to know the folks. So I pick a different group every time, people I've never met before, and sit and talk to them. And I watch these amazing people bring the food out and put it down in front of people. And they say, would you like something? Would you like this or that? And you know, sometimes the guests, just like if you're a server at a restaurant, you'll know, sometimes the guests aren't always the most polite. Does this have pork? I can't eat pork. Why is there no grape juice? You know, Most of them are extremely lovely. But just like anyone, you get a grumpy person here and there. And I watch the grace and the patience that they show with these folks is amazing. It's the best service you could possibly get, bar none, anywhere. And none of them are working for tips. I think about the friends and the family that always have my back. And that friends and family now includes all of you. The way that you've welcomed us in, shown us love, and supported us as a family has been incredible. I think about those things. To me, that is lovely. I was thinking this week about, how long am I? I don't want to ponder too long. I was thinking this week, I'm almost done. When I was in Midland, we had this great program where you could donate wheelchairs and walkers and bathroom seats and stuff. We called it our medical supply cupboard. And during COVID, there wasn't anyone to really staff it, but I was in the building, thousands of square feet all alone. And people would come and they would look for this equipment. We took it as a donation and we gave it out free as a donation. No money exchanged hands. We just did it for love to make sure that if you needed a wheelchair today, you could get a wheelchair today. That kind of thing. And I remember this woman came in. She was 82 years old, and she had trouble making her way up the stairs. We put it on the second floor for some reason. And I took her in. She said, my husband of 66 years, he's almost 90. He's a proud, strong man. But he's come to a place where he can no longer walk. And I want to bring him home from the hospital, but I need a wheelchair and I need it now. So I said, let's take a look. And so we looked. There was nothing that she wanted. So I went upstairs. I said, I think the overflow's up there. And she looked up at those stairs and she said, I can't do that. I said, okay. I went upstairs and I found the perfect wheelchair. Everything she was looking for. The size, the features. And I brought it downstairs to her and I said, good news. Here's what you need. And I'll never forget. She went white. She went white. She fell into the doorway. She slumped over. I thought she was going to collapse. I thought she was having an event. I said, are you okay? And she just started crying. And she said, he has looked after me for 66 years. And it's my turn to look after him. And you giving me this wheelchair means I can do that today. She was so appreciative. We got it into her car on the way, and I only knew her for 20 minutes, but sometimes I think about how God orchestrated things that somebody years ago said, we need a supply cupboard. And I just happened to be there at that time to watch her need being met. Because I know on that day, this for her, this verse, when she thinks about how God supplied her need in that moment, that is something positive for her to think about. I don't know about you, but this Lent, I'm not giving up any meats, I'm not giving up any sweets. I want to give up pessimism and take up positivity. I want to focus on the good things in my life instead of the problems, to dwell on whatever is noble and praiseworthy and pure, to rediscover in this difficult time a little bit of hope. Doesn't that sound so much better than the alternative? After all, it worked for the Apostle Paul. His life was not easy. It was fraught with persecution and it was fraught with misadventure. So it just might work for me. And it might work for you too, if you want to give it a try. After a while, if we focus on positivity, we just might find that this jar isn't half full, half empty after all. It's what? Half full. Let us pray. No, we're not praying. We're doing a song now. For 25 years, I've ended with a prayer, but I'm used to it. We're going to stand and we're going to sing an appropriate hymn for this moment. Rejoice, the Lord is King.